What's going on, guys? Today I am here with Jesse Smith, FK Iron's Pro Team artist. You guys may know him from a little show called Ink Master. I'm just honored that I could call him a friend of mine and one of the most amazing artists actually that I've ever met, man. Honestly, Jesse, you know I always tell you that I fan out when I talk to you. I mean, this guy's crazy. I seen him, guys. When he tattooed me, he drew it on me with a marker. So yeah, we've seen that a lot. But not only did he draw it on me with a marker, but then he just had no reference or no nothing. So he went from his head to my back. I mean, that still blows my mind to this day, Jesse.
Yeah, I think I only used 2 or 3 colors on you too. I
Yeah,
was kind of
yeah. Your
used like
color
a
palette was
limited palette.
it was like five colors.
Yeah,
Five
you
colors.
mixed everything to kind of create that unified palette. So
Man, that was true mastery at work, Jesse. Let me tell you.
thanks, man. I
So
appreciate
we're
it.
gonna go a little bit of a different route. We're gonna start today. So first of all, if anybody who didn't know but that does know Jesse, Jesse did serve our country, and so first of all, we wanted to thank you for your service, Jesse. We appreciate you, man.
Thank you, man.
We'll start with a couple basic questions, man. So, what branch did you serve?
So I was in the Army. I was actually stationed in Fort Eustis, Virginia, which is probably about an hour from Richmond.
Awesome. Were you already living in Richmond?
No, actually, my dad was in the Army, so we lived in Germany, Heidelberg, Germany. And so I joined the military, and it stationed me in Fort Eustis,
Mm.
and that's how I got to Virginia.
So you got there. Okay. So how old were you when you enlisted?
I think I had listed when I was 18, but I don't think I actually got in the military till I was 19.
Okay. How long did you serve for?
I was in for 3 years. I was a watercraft engineer, so I worked on boat engines. Believe it or not, it's funny because I didn't even know the Army had boats, and when I was looking for a job, when they asked me what I wanted to do in the military, the first thing I wanted to do was be an artist. And they had a MOS. It was 25 mic, I believe, and it was multimedia illustrator.
Hmm.
But they didn't tell me about it. They were like, "Yeah, we don't have that, and you need to pick something else." And so my goal was to work near the ocean because I really like the ocean. And I figured if I picked something, I was like, "Hey, do you have anything near the ocean?" They were like, "Well, we have these underwater diver jobs." And so I was trying to get into that, and then they, I guess, canceled it. I don't really know, some weird stuff. And then they ended up putting me on the boat. And I went through and got my GI Bill. And then when I got out, I used the GI Bill to go to art school.
Nice. So you were already interested in drawing and drawing even before you enlisted, huh?
Yeah, I've been drawing my whole life. I've got a little sketchbook full of drawings back when I was like 12 years old.
Holy crap. That's amazing. Amazing. So, why did you choose the army? Did you say your dad was in the army, or was he just in the military?
Yeah, my dad was in the Army. I actually was going to join the Air Force. It was funny because I had an appointment with the Air Force recruiter. We'll just say at like 1 o'clock, and so I got there at 12:30, and 1 o'clock came around, and the Air Force recruiter was busy, and right across the hall was the Army recruiter. And my dad, my stepmom at the time, was like, "Hey, if why don't we just pop over and talk to the Army recruiter while we're waiting for the Air Force recruiter?" And of course, went over there, and next thing you know, I'm in the Army.
It was meant to be for you following your dad's footsteps, huh?
Yeah. I think they definitely pushed me in that direction. They wanted me to do something. I didn't have any sort of like real goal. I mean, my goal is to go to art school, but my dad thought that was kind of a pipe dream. And to be honest, if I was looking back, it really was a pipe dream. Luckily, I kind of surfed the artistic circles and found my way into the tattoo world. But yeah, I got lucky. I would say that most people who go into the art world typically don't make money off of it at any capacity.
Hmm. Yeah, back then there weren't a lot of people making money off their art until they passed away or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or they're doing some sort of illustrations for like Hallmark
Yeah,
cards,
yeah.
stuff like that, and which I probably would have been content and fine with. You
Drawing
know,
Hallmark cards.
honestly, when I first started doing art, I was just happy to do art. Period. I mean, I didn't start tattooing tattooing to do my style of work. I just like doing art. So we'd be tattooing stuff off the side of the flash. Excuse me. We'd be tattooing flash and I'd be super stoked about it. So I just like doing art. I did have my style back then, but I didn't realize it was a style. I just like drawing cartoons and continued to draw cartoons. And then when I got into art school, they were pushing us towards still lifes and portraits and stuff like that. And by the time I got out of art school, I almost kind of forgot that I liked doing cartoons, and I almost forgot how to draw cartoons because I was so used to using real life reference for everything. It almost like kind of destroyed my artistic vocabulary that I had to like relearn how to do all that. Excuse me.
Going around the way here too, Jesse. Yeah, it is crazy. No.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I lost my artistic vocabulary while I was in school because we used tons of reference. It was always like, hey, if you're going to draw this thing, go shoot reference and then use the reference as a guide to what you're trying to draw. And so when I got out of art school, I struggled to try to pull stuff out of my brain straight to, paper or canvas or whatever. And I actually had to force myself to not use reference so that I could retrain my brain how to draw, hands and stuff without looking at hands. Because when you use reference, at least when I use reference, I feel like I kind of lose the flavor. It's like you're almost, working off of this base that is based in reality. So it's difficult for you to like kind of make things up off of that base. So once I got back to starting to learn how to draw from my brain again, then I started bringing reference in after the fact instead of before. And so now I'll kind of like go back and forth where I'll bring reference in at the beginning, kind of do some rough sketches to just prime my brain and learn what that is. So if someone wants a certain type of dog or something like that, I'll look at the dog and do a couple quick sketches. Then I'll put that away and then I'll draw it out of my head and then get that piece down. And then I might bring reference back in to see what I missed or to, get a color palette or look for lighting or something like that.
That's freaking insane how you do that, man.
Yeah.
So, got a couple more questions on this. So did you, or how did you imagine military life would be before you joined, and did your perceptions change after you joined it?
Yeah, I mean, I was raised in a military family, so it wasn't too much different than the way my dad raised me. I mean, it was a tad bit more strict, but my dad was a relatively strict guy, and he would, he taught me to follow through, take accountability, be disciplined, all that stuff. So when I went into the military, all that came kind of easy to me. But of course it's coming, with the basic training, they're like yelling at you and stuff like that. But to me, in my mind, it was just a game. It wasn't even real. I kind of like, inside I would laugh and look at it as a challenge. And I was pretty physically fit back then. I was a wrestler in high school. So when I went into basic training, it was like, they'd be like, drop and give me 20 and 20 push-ups for me back then was no big deal.
Problem, let's go.
Yeah. And then
yes, sir.
Yeah, no big deal. And, I just kind of looked at it as a challenge. And honestly, I always felt like, working out was a good thing. So when they forced me to work out because I did something wrong, then, I was like, oh, cool. I'm getting an opportunity to work out in the middle of basic training. So I would just see how quickly I could do these. And then before long, by the end of basic training, they would tell me, drop and give me 80 or something like 20 because they knew 20 wasn't going to do much for me.
Too easy.
Too easy, yep.
Holy crap. I was actually going to ask you about that. Well, you already answered that. So let me ask you a question. Any cool or funny stories that you can remember that you could tell us from basic training?
Man, I don't know if they're, I guess probably the same. They did a lot of the mask, the gas chamber type stuff, which was pretty interesting. So you go into the gas chamber, you take off your gas mask, you have to say your social security number and put it back on. A lot of just shooting and stuff. I'm not a big gun guy, but I was actually a really good shooter. I shot like 40 out of 40 the last couple times that I shot, and got the expert badge and all that stuff. So it was a super interesting experience, and believe it or not, it's somewhat uncomfortable. I mean, somewhat comfortable, because you know exactly what's going to happen every day for the most part. You're going to wake up at this time, you're going to work out at this time, eat at this time, do this class or whatever from this time to this time. And all the boundaries are outlined for you. When you get into the real world, everybody's got.
That was my next question, so go for it. Yeah.
You get out in the real world, and all the boundaries are all over the place. You go into the tattoo world, if you show up on time, then you're early. And, if you go into, corporate bank world, you know what I mean? Like, everybody's got different rules. When you're in the Army, it's just like, these are the rules, and you got to stick with them. You can't wear certain types of socks. You have to have your sleeves rolled up a certain way, and you can only wear your hat in certain scenarios, and everything's just very outlined. And, they have it very outlined on what can get you ahead and what will keep you back. There's just very clear goals when you're in the military. Whereas in, the real world, there's just tons of different variables that get you ahead or set you behind.
So I can say that I'm sure that influenced you, on your way out, and that it kind of gave you that platform, or that, how do you call it, that you're on schedule and the way you do everything. Yes, that structure.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember, when I got out of the military, I moved up to Richmond to go to art school, but I was tattooing the whole time. I actually started tattooing while I was in the military. And I remember getting my first job at a tattoo shop, and I showed up to the tattoo shop, 15 minutes early, just kind of what I was used to doing. And the owner of the shop didn't show up until like 45 minutes later. And back then, they only had keys, so there was no way of just letting someone in with a code or anything like that. So I just sat there waiting for an hour in front of the shop with, a couple of the clients and stuff like that. And I remember the artists being upset with me because I was, they felt like I was kind of trying to show them up or make them look bad or stuff like that. It was just like, this was just normal to me, the way that you would do business and the way that you would, be there for your clients, when they're ready, and you tell them that you're going to be ready, etc. So it was definitely an adjustment period when I first got into the tattoo world.
So did you go from the military straight to art school, or no?
Yeah, I went.
You were already tattooing at that point also?
Yeah, so I started tattooing probably about a year or two after I had been in the military. So I was in the military for 3 years. I started tattooing in 98. I got in 96. So I guess it would have been about 2 years after I was in the military. So yeah, I started tattooing. I was just kind of tattooing, other soldiers in my platoon and stuff like that. And when I got out, my goal was to go to art school, but I was still tattooing out of the house. And I, ran around Richmond looking for a job, and finally landed one. And that was a big wake up call. It's like, I remember the boss would like call us in the back, and he'd be like, "Hey, we got a shop meeting." And so I'd go back there, and then, the shop meeting was basically a weed break. And I wasn't even smoking weed back then. And I just remember going back there, and one time, I had first started working in the shop, and I barely smoked weed. And he was like, "Yo, take a hit." And I didn't want to like ruffle, change anything up. So I took a hit, and it took me probably, I think, 2 hours to tattoo this little clover on this guy because I was so high.
So is that where your style comes from now?
Yeah. I mean, the crazy thing is I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't do any of that stuff. So everything that you see me draw comes from a sober mind.
Nice. Oh yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing, man. Now, in what other ways would you say the military influenced your tattooing or your tattoo career, other than that structure?
I mean, I would say that's definitely the main aspect that I got, that I feel like I benefited from in the tattoo world, because, there was lots of people that wanted to get tattooed by someone who was going to be on time and who had their drawings ready and stuff like that. And I would say that, I would say most artists, at least back then, were struggling to keep to do those things. So, and same thing with me, if I have a choice of working with someone that I know I can count on, that's going to be there and be ready, I'd prefer to work with that person than even if I had two people, one was good and one was great. A great guy I could never count on and was never, available or didn't have his drawings ready or whatever. And then the good guy was always on time and had everything. I'd go with the good guy over the great guy.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Oh, did you do any tattoos while you were in the military? Like, did you tattoo any of your army buddies?
Yeah, that's where I started. So I started.
Any memorable ones?
What's that?
Any memorable ones?
Oh yeah, tons. So I started tattooing. So I actually drew caricatures at Busch Gardens when I was in the Army as well. I'd do that on the weekends, and then throughout like hanging out with a bunch of local artists, I met this dude named Carlos who was tattooing out of his house. He had just got out of prison, and I would hang out over at his house and I would draw with him, and he would tattoo some of my designs, and he was always tattooing. Honestly, I never really even thought about tattooing. And then one day he was like, "Hey, you want to do a tattoo?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And so he taught me how to make a little ghetto gun. We made it out of a Walkman motor, a toothbrush, sewing needle, some acrylic on there, some super glue. I mean, I still have the machine. It's pretty crazy. And I took that machine and I did my first tattoo, and it was horrible. It was like a tribal wolf howling at a tribal moon. And you keep in mind, this is like doing tribal with one needle. You're using a sewing needle, so I'm using one needle. Everything had to be gone over 7 times before it actually went in, and that tattoo is still healing to this day.
You scarred him.
Scarred him for life. What's that?
Scarred him for life.
Yeah, but it was nuts, man. I mean, so of course I did that tattoo on that person, and they went back to work, and then everybody's like, "Oh shit, Jesse's tattooing!" So they just started lining up. Everybody wanted me to tattoo them. I wasn't charging at all. I think I was just, to me, it was just doing art, and they started lining up, and I just started tattooing, and then it kind of got to a point where I was like, oh, I'm doing this more often. I'm doing it like almost every day after I get off work, doing it on the weekends when I have time. And so I just started taking it more seriously. I started charging like $20 a tattoo, and I would save up that money. And then I bought my first machine, and then I bought autoclave and just built up this whole little shop in my house. And then when I got out of the military, I shot up to Richmond, was tattooing out of my house in Richmond, and then eventually got into that shop, the one where I was significantly significantly early compared to everybody else.
I was like, wait a minute. Okay. I mean, that still happens. I mean,
sure. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's definitely, it's definitely something that I feel like is kind of normal in the tattoo world.
Yeah.
Here at Loose Screw, I always try to make sure that everybody is ready, ready, setting up and all that good stuff at least a half hour before the client shows up. And, that's something that I think is a relatively easy thing to do that can help you stand out above other tattoo shops, is being available and ready for the clients when you have an appointment set up.
Yeah, I mean, I've shown up to appointments. They'll tell you come in at 3. You go in at 3, and at that time they tell you, okay, let's design your tattoo.
Right. Yeah. And which sounds real hypocritical of me now that I'm drawing right on the skin.
But that's different. Come on.
Yeah. Well, there's multiple reasons why I started drawing on the skin. One of them was because when I go home and I would draw, I would, especially on iPads, when iPads came out, it got worse, is I would do too much detail. I would draw too much detail, and then I'd go and I'd stencil it, and it would just have all these like little teeny things in it. And I realized that, I was getting too detailed because you're able to zoom in and draw, and then the piece looks like it's this big, but then when you print it out and everything, it's actually smaller and the way they wanted it. So in doing drawing with markers, because the tip's a little fatter, it kind of keeps me from putting too much detail in. And then also because the client's sitting there, I definitely try to bash out a drawing within a half hour to an hour tops. And that requires me to kind of like not get tweaky with all the details. And then, over the course of the process, so I draw on there, get that quick base down. I'll etch the lines in and then start coloring it. And then I'll start adding detail in there as I go. But I like the process. It's a little more organic. It's a lot more fun for me. And then I'll also notice that it fits the body typically better, because I'm on the body. I can see where the muscles go, all that good stuff. And then I think the clients like it, because then, they're kind of involved in the creative process as well. And you're like, hey, you like this? Nah, I don't like that. Can you do this? Can you move that over there? And then, we just fix it in real time. And it works out really well for tattoo conventions. I've caught myself, I'll go to a tattoo convention with an artist or two, and by the time they've taken their sketch, figured out how to use the printer and Thermofax, and come back and put the stencil on the client, I've already drawn everything on there. Trying to figure out tattoo convention, Thermofaxes and printers is nuts.
Wi-Fi, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think what's crazy also, man, what's so amazing about that process is that we feel that, or we know that we're getting a one-of-a-kind piece. I mean, it's coming from your head to my skin. I mean, what are the odds of you being able to exactly duplicate that tattoo again? I mean, maybe you can do it, but,
Well, the other thing that I think is going to be interesting, too, is now that there's all these AI programs where people can generate art, I think it's going to get less and less less and less valuable per se, because people are gonna be like, oh yeah, everyone's generating them through this program. And then, I think also people are gonna have less trust for artists, because they're gonna be like, oh yeah, they just generated that. Yeah. So, drawing right on the skin, you get to see everything. You get to see the references that I use. If I use any, you get to see how long it took. I mean, everything's happening right there in real time. So I think that this AI stuff is probably going to push in two different directions. One, like I said, people are going to lose. The value of art is going to probably diminish a little bit because people can create it so easily on this app. And then two, the trust of artist to artist are going to be like, yeah, that guy's, does really cool tattoos, but he generates everything. So they're of course going to give that person less value as well. So the drawing right on, I think, is one of those things that's going to help mitigate that trust factor, and also get people to appreciate how long it really does take to create these things. I mean, there's some times where shit's just not coming out of my head, or the tattoo's just massive, and I'll be drawing for 2 or 3 hours on someone, and then other times when I'm doing like a little banger, like what I did on you. I mean, I don't know how long it took me to have that drawing on you, but I'm sure it wasn't more than a half hour.
I think we did maybe 3.5 hours was total time.
3.5 hours with the drawing, with the drawing.
Total time.
Yeah, I was like, that was a quick one. It wasn't that small either. What is it like?
No, it's a nice size, and honestly, it's one of my favorites on me, if not my favorite, that I have on me right now, man.
Better be your face. Favorite? What are you talking about?
It is. I call it my trophy, honestly, when I tell people,
Yeah.
I'm like, look, Jesse did this, and everybody just freaks out, and you get a bunch of people, and then I tell them how you did it, and then that's even more mind-blowing,
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's amazing. So just a couple more questions, man, and we'll be done. So if you had to do it all over again, would you do it exactly the same way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
the military, the whole thing.
I think the military, there's a lot of countries like, mandatory 2 years in the military before they go out into the real world. And I think that serves two purposes. One, you're actually giving back to the community at some capacity, which way you look at it. I mean, obviously, I don't want to go to war, and I don't really want anybody to go to war. But the military does a lot more things than just go to war. They there's different things that they do for communities that are in struggle and stuff like that. So there's lots of good things that come out of the military. But yeah, you're kind of serving your community at some capacity. And then the other thing is it gives you that discipline. A lot of people, they come out of high school, they're not ready. They're not ready to go out. They just want to get drunk and party and stuff like that, which is totally fine. But, if you can do it simultaneously while getting the discipline and getting the accountability and all that stuff kind of, put into your brain, I think it's a good way to prep for real life. It also gives you more appreciation for the freedom that you have in real life. When I went in the military, I was like, you can't wear, you can't wear civilian. You couldn't wear any civilian clothes for the first, I think it was, 6 months that I was in. And so then all of a sudden you appreciate just being able to wear an outfit.
Yeah.
Food you can eat, being able to leave base and stuff like that. So it's almost like in order for you to truly appreciate what you have to have it taken away for a little bit. And that's what the military does. So yeah, I totally am glad I went the way I did. And to be honest, there's sometimes I actually miss the military. I miss certain aspects of it. I remember we'd wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and we'd go jogging for PT, and the entire base was awake at 5 a.m. and they're all running, and you can hear them chanting, their cadences and stuff like that. And it was just there was so much energy happening on base, and the sun would start peeking over the buildings, and I just remember that being such a invigorating experience. Just the entire base is chanting different things, and people are running around and everything's moving, and it's 5 a.m., 5:30.
This is like a movie, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like the movies, to an extent. Obviously, the movies got some stuff happening in there that I never experienced while I was in, but.
Well, no, I mean that whole scenery is like a movie when you walk out there.
Yeah.
You're watching all this go on, you're like, whoa, this shit is insane,
Yeah, no, and everybody's there, and there's a purpose, and I've always enjoyed physical fitness, and so it was one of those things where, of course, some days you don't feel like working out, but you don't have a choice. They're making you. So.
Oh yeah, awesome, man. So, Jesse, we want to say Happy Veterans Day, and we want to ask you if you have any words for your fellow veterans out there before we go.
Yeah, man. I mean, especially in times like now, I'm very thankful to have people that are willing to serve. I definitely in my own scenario never wanted to be in this type of situation that we're in right now, but it's good to know that there are people that are willing to take that position and help us if we need it.
Awesome. Jesse, like always, bro, thank you so much.
Man.
You're amazing to talk to. I love talking to you every single time. So thank you, bro. We appreciate you for your service again. And we'll be talking soon, my brother. Thank you.
Awesome. Zeke, thanks so much, bud.
Let me get a hug. All right, Jesse. Love you, my brother.
Later, bud.